And the real big issue, honestly, the white elephant in the room when it comes to this too, when it comes to like apartments, and we look at specifically in cities where you think like rent is going to be the highest per square foot. You go to New York, you go to L.A., you're gonna, especially New York. New York is the worst when it comes to this. You look at some of these like luxury apartments. And you're like, why are like 80% of the lights out? It's because about 80% of them are vacant, and they're being bought up by like Russian oligarchs and like Chinese millionaires overseas, maybe even Indian billionaires overseas, and they're buying these apartments, these complexes, and just washing their money through it. And it is actually like it's a huge white elephant in the room, and it's like how you can't get a normal family in there because the price of that apartment's been so inflated because it's being bought from people who are overseas, not even in America.
At the national level, the middle class is typically defined as households with an annual income ranging between $53,740 and $161,200.
This is actually a pretty good range. I would say this is definitely lower middle class and definitely upper middle class. And when did the American dream become so unaffordable? It feels like year after year, it feels like you're a fat man in a race, and you're just, that hope and dream is just Usain Bolt just pulling away from you. Like they're just jet dashing, and you're over here being a brimstone, just looking like, how the fuck am I supposed to catch that?
But middle-class Americans like Kyle Connolly from Pensacola, Florida, says life has quickly grown unaffordable.
Financially, things have definitely been a struggle for me.
I went on a date last night. If you guys follow my Instagram, Twitch, and all that, you saw that I posted up on the stories. Rice with a little bit of beef. Lo had some tacos. We both had a margarita. She had a second margarita, a little bit of queso. $130 at a Mexican restaurant, and we're not talking like one where they have a valet out front and like they're rubbing your shoulders, maybe giving you a little worker on the side. No, this is just the standard. Get some margaritas, have some chips and queso, kind of hang out with the friends. $130.
I don't know how, but every single month I somehow managed to get by, and I'm left with, maybe this past month I was left with $125 in my checking account, and that's it.
How, and with that 125, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to put that technically back into like maybe some type of an investment, whether it be in crypto like XRP, or whether it be in like, I don't know, Nvidia or Tesla. But that's not going to get you anywhere. If you did that for a year, you'd have $1,200. But that's not gonna, what are you going to do with that? Put that for collateral for what? A new moped?
As of June 2024, 65% of middle-class Americans said they were struggling financially and don't expect their situation to improve for the rest of their lives.
Well, 65% of middle-class Americans probably don't know how to do their taxes, don't understand investing, don't understand compound interest, don't understand a lot of things. Because in school, we were told, that Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, instead of learning how to, balance a spreadsheet, how to budget money, understanding actual government efficiencies and deficiencies. Like, I think this is a systemic issue of us not being taught or having better education in our youth.
It's a part of
Americans
the
so stupid
distribution that has felt a lot of pain in the wake of the pandemic, and it wasn't something that just economists were tracking. It was something that was really felt on the household level. People felt it in their grocery bills, people felt it at the gas pump.
In their own neighborhoods and in their own lives, they have their own expectations for what they can do, where they can go, where they can eat, where they can live. And to the degree,
it's just insane that over the past 4 years, if you made the same amount of money, the same amount of like you try to maintain the same amount of lifestyle, you're down, like you're negative 25, 27% accumulated across all these different things. Like, how are you supposed to grow consistently 27%? That is insane. And they're just going to say, no, price of interest rates are only up 7.5%. And you're like, well, why is food 20% of an increase? Why is gas 150%? I shouldn't say 150% increase, but why is it so damn expensive?
That they're facing those pressures on an individual basis, it really is causing quite a bit of an alarm.
75% of middle-income families say they are actively cutting back on non-essential expenses, with 73% finding it difficult to save for the future.
It's no more Netflix. Netflix is bumping up their subscription each month. You can pay to have ads and watch Netflix. Nope, gonna get rid of that service completely. Plus, like, can we agree that like Netflix originals haven't been smacking like they used to? Like, the Netflix original doesn't mean nearly as much as what it did. But this is what I was just getting at. It's like 73% of middle income families said that they find it difficult to save for the future. not only save, how are you supposed to realistically invest? And granted, investing and saving can kind of be in that same wheelhouse, but how are you supposed to get ahead on $100 a month?
I have had
How are you supposed to have a 3 month, like a rain bucket, like a security blanket?
to reduce all non-essential spending. I've gotten one haircut because it just got out of control, and that's it. That's all that I can afford.
We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. There's a strong.
That's when Tim Walsh was like, "What? Hold on, you guys need to listen to this guy." I'm picking up what he says, and if you're picking up the words that are coming out my mouth, you're picking up what I'm putting down. Like the video, subscribe.
Strong role for policy in affecting the prices of all these essential goods, from housing to childcare to healthcare expenses.
I think there's a lot of scope to have government programs that help the middle class quite a bit more.
So how has the middle class life become so unaffordable for Americans?
Inflation.
Housing is always going to be typically the biggest bite of a household's budget. I think
Yeah, somebody who, like my parents, could have bought a house for $200,000, right? That same house now is going to be worth close to 750, if not a million, and that asset grows over time. How are we now at our age supposed to buy a house that's currently really valued at 750, but was bought back at 250, and the only thing that changed is the time on the calendar? Not really even the neighborhood. Sometimes even the quality of the neighborhoods can go down, but just because of longevity, inflation, and year over year, it's just gotten so out of hand.
that's probably a
Plus, you have the World Economic Forum who's over here like trying to push the "you'll own nothing and you will be happy. You will rent everything. You will no need for ownership." Imagine the compliance.
primary issue in terms of why people are feeling that crunch.
I am currently renting, and I would say that the housing is probably about 65% of my monthly expenses, where
Yeah, I say about the same.
it should be the other way around. It should be 33%.
The median
Let's see. Hold on. Let me do some math real quick. It's about 69%.
rent for middle-income families has risen by 18% to $1,300 per household between 2001 and 2022.
You've just seen this intense upward pressure on the cost of rent, and that filters through to the cost of buying a house.
Existing home prices hit a record in June 2024,
Yep.
with existing homes selling at a median price of $426,900.
You know, and the real big issue, honestly, the white elephant in the room when it comes to this too, when it comes to like apartments, and we look at specifically in cities where you think like rent is going to be the highest per square foot. You go to, New York, you go to LA, you're going to, especially New York. New York is the worst when it comes to this. You look at some of these like luxury apartments and you're like, why are like 80% of the lights out? It's because about 80% of them are vacant and they're being bought up by like Russian oligarchs and like Chinese millionaires overseas, maybe even Indian billionaires overseas. And they're buying these apartments, these complexes, and just washing their money through it. And it is actually like it's a huge white elephant in the room. And it's like how you can't get a normal family in there because the price of that apartment's been so inflated because it's being bought from people who are overseas, not even in America. Can we also talk about how China owns so much farmland and land around militaries? And America's been making some dumb, boneheaded decisions over the past 4 years, but we have had some systemic issues, like China scooping up land.
According to the most recent analysis, U.S. is facing a shortage of 4.5
And poisoning the food, poisoning the water, turning the freaking frogs gay.
million homes. In 2022, families in the U.S. increased by 1.8 million, but only 1.4 million housing units were built to meet the demand.
We've got lots of families.
And what's more, you can have 1.4 million housing units, but how much of them are being bought up from people who aren't even in the United States? And then how many of these, they jack up the price so much so that the apartments that aren't being bought, that are legitimately vacant, they're priced out of a range that normal families can get into.
Who are trying to form, people leave college, they leave their parents' house, they want to buy their own house, and we just haven't seen housing construction.
If you don't build more housing, then housing becomes more expensive.
I also think there probably needs to be a cultural shift. Lo, and I talked about this the other day. For those of you who don't know, Lo is my girlfriend. She's beautiful. I love her, and she is low-key, unintentionally super funny. But We were talking the other day, and it's like the idea of a generational home is not really an American thing. Most of the time, it's like the kids go 18, go to college, you get a job, you get a girl or a boy, get a kid, and live the American dream and have a house. But other cultures have people like multiple generations, and there's probably a lot of benefit that comes to that, with one of kids learning the grievance of death, learning the importance of the elderly, and seeing all the different phases through life in your house where you're the most comfortable. I don't know. I think this idea of the American dream can shift around a little bit. It should be like water. It should be fluid. Shout out to Bruce Lee.
And that's exactly what's happening in a lot of coastal cities, and increasingly more and more cities across the United States, that it becomes very unaffordable to buy a house.
What it amounts to are state and local policies that have really operated over the course of several decades to restrict housing supply.
It's the old story that people in single-family homes in desirable neighborhoods really push back against efforts to build more housing in those neighborhoods. They complain about the parking. They complain about pressure on infrastructure.
Experts say,
yeah, but we're looking solely at like suburban areas. We need to be looking at like these super city areas and these super city concrete jungle as places like New York is where I'm thinking of, LA, maybe even parts of Dallas, Atlanta, where I'm at. And then we need to look at the exact opposite, places like in Kansas, where it's these large fields, and maybe if so long that it's one, not, the field isn't owned by like an American farmer because we need our farmland, and two, especially if it's owned by China, get China to sell that back to us, and then start building buildings on top of that, or just kind of figure out a way where we get the land back, because it's insane that China owns so much freaking land in the United States.
policy
Insane.
intervention is essential to tackling the affordability crisis.
There's an opportunity.
Like, imagine if if Canada went to Mumbai and like low-key owned like parts and districts in Mumbai and like Kashmir and whatnot. Like, you're like, you step into the store and you're like, you're telling me this store is Canadian, all of this shit's in here, like the land we're on, we're in India, why is this Canadian? You know what I mean? Like, that just sounds crazy.
Today to rethink how the federal government interacts with housing markets. We already see this in markets like healthcare in the United States. It's not a purely privatized market. There is a government role, both in terms of investments and also just in terms of thinking about how we organize policies.
We don't need to build public housing in the suburbs, but we do need to build more densely near the city center, allow for duplexes and triplexes, at least some amount of light touch density that allows more people to live near where their jobs are, and it brings down
I agree with
rents
that.
and
Oh, you don't have like my buddy Bristol who has a 2-hour commute. That sucks.
home prices a bit,
Like maybe a 90-minute commute, but still 3 hours every day in the car and traffic. Ugh,
even if that's going to
not a way to live.
not be as good for existing homeowners.
Add to that we see childcare costs that have also exploded over the years. In some parts of the country, you have households paying upwards of $25,000 per year.
The cost of childcare has risen at more than twice the rate of inflation in the U.S., increasing by 273% between 1990 and 2024.
We expect these families to go and participate in the labor market, but they need this vital support.
We have a system in the U.S. that is just so much you're on your own, unless you're very, very poor and can get a subsidy.
I'm very fortunate that what I
And it's like America works on the extremes. You either got to be super duper poor, or you got to be floating up with the rest of the big sharks up here, and you got to be balling out. But it's the people who are kind of making the whole country function here in the middle that kind of get left out to dry. And then even talking about the country supporting internally in the country, having like good blue working collar jobs. We also have the vets who come back and also get disrespected and don't get the support and need that they deserve.
I do to earn an income
Very messed
does
up.
not require me to have childcare. I would basically be making the equivalent of $7.50 an hour over the summer if I had to pay for full-time childcare for 3 children. It doesn't make sense.
In 2023, 67% of parents reported spending at least 20% of their annual income on childcare, while 89% said they spent 10% or more of their household income on childcare.
So if we have 60% of your money is in rent, now 10% is in childcare, that's 70%. You have 30% left to cover for food, activities, savings, investment. What else? Like you, how are you supposed to live? How are you supposed to get
See
ahead?
here is really a marketplace that's still in a bit of disarray. We have shortages in childcare centers. We have childcare workers who really report being underpaid, which then exacerbates the problem.
You sometimes have states or localities insisting on regulations that just don't make sense for childcare, that make onerous restrictions on child to staff ratios or certain zoning restrictions on where you can have a childcare facility.
And so again, here, there is an opportunity to prop up this labor market and this overall marketplace. We saw some of this effort taking place during the pandemic. In 2021, the United States embarked upon a historic expansion in the refundable child tax credit.
Expanded not just in its generosity, but also in the number of families it reached. It went deep into the middle.
Yeah, but even if that's still a tax reimbursement, so you still have to go through your entire existence, and then once a year you get a $3,000 kickback. But $3,000 may not even literally be enough to cover the expenses that you took on. Plus the stress from day to day, living paycheck to paycheck. That one lump sum payment is not gonna be, or not even, it's not even a payment. It's more like a deduction on taxes that you might theoretically owe. And they're like, don't worry, you've done enough.
Middle class. Like often the child tax credit in previous years has just really been a low income program. This one really spread out, didn't start phasing out until $100,000 or more for a bunch of families.
That was a one-year experiment that expired. You've had policymakers advocating for making this 2021 expanded child tax credit permanent, but it has faced resistance in the Congress.
Healthcare is another major factor making the middle-class lifestyle unaffordable for many American families.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I recently got healthcare, and I could tell you, my shoulders felt like this all my life, and then it just was like, ooh. Once I was able to actually get a job that provided good, solid healthcare. So this one hits home a lot, because I was going throughout healthcare for a while, and you think about every sickness, every bump, every bruise. You're like, oh, am I dead? Are they gonna turn me away? What do I do?
In 2021, about 12.4 million middle-class families had unpaid medical bills, the highest among all other income groups.
Healthcare expenses weigh heavily on me because I don't have health insurance personally. My children do, but I don't. Every time I sit down to go ahead and look for a health plan that would make sense, I get discouraged because what I can afford has like a $15,000 deductible, but I'm giving them $600 a month.
So at the, you're giving somebody $600 a month, and then if you do go to the doctor, they're not going to help you out until you've hit $15,000 a month on your own copays. It's insane.
Pretty well known by now that if you compare the U.S. to almost any other advanced country, we spend a ton more on healthcare, and we do not get better health outcomes.
The U.S. spends about $12,742 per person on healthcare, the highest cost per capita compared to other wealthy OECD countries. However, the country still ranks lower on key health measures like life expectancy and infant mortality when compared to similar nations.
Everything costs more. Doctors cost more, drugs cost more, devices cost more. And that to me just seems to be a clear problem of market power in the healthcare sector. And so you've got pharmaceutical companies that unambiguously have market power. That's what patents
Big pharma
are.
And big pharma isn't all, and it should be like deep tech, because you got to think about these companies that are making like a new scalpel and then charging like $15,000 for a new scalpel, or like $45 for a screw. Like these companies and hospitals and government bodies get screwed with how invoicing is done, because I don't blame them. If I own the shop and the government's coming in here, I'm like, yo, add an extra zero to that, because they're good. They fuck us enough with our taxes. Let's fuck them a little bit.
Unlike other countries that really try to leverage some kind of monopsony power against pharmaceutical companies to sort of countervail their monopoly power, we don't do that much in the US. Besides drugs, you've got growing consolidation in sort of hospitals and specialty providers.
A study by Harvard University discovered that hospital prices in markets with a monopoly are 15% higher in areas with 4 or more hospitals.
Go figure. An area that has more hospitals is going to be way more expensive than an area that just has one hospital that's taking on people from all over the region, and possibly, if it's bordering states, possibly from multiple states. It's crazy to think about.
And research from
Not really.
UCLA revealed that monopoly protection increased consumer costs by $52.6 billion across a sample of 355 brand-name drugs. In response to these concerns, the Justice Department launched a task force in May 2024, focused on specifically addressing monopolies and collusion in the healthcare sector.
You want to leverage the power of public buyers of healthcare, to bargain with them and countervail, but then you also want to do antitrust, to say, if you're going to buy up every anesthesiologist in a given area and start price gouging, we're not going to let you do that. We're actually going to regulate, or we're going to disallow the mergers.
Prices are also rising for essential expenses other than the big three.
The utilities that are just slowly increasing. It's like every month, it's like my usage is down, but why is my bill higher? Obviously, groceries are more expensive. It hurts.
We all feel that.
It really does hurt when I have to tell my children.
Yeah, we all feel that.
When I have to tell them that, sorry, we can't go to this activity because I don't have the extra $120 to spare this month. As a mother, that's kind of like the hardest part.
Rising prices have been a major...
And especially like if you're trying to maintain like the same kind of lifestyle, you're not even trying to live an exorbitant lifestyle. You're just trying to like do something simple, and like maybe every other week, once a month, you guys go out to dinner, or like have like a family dinner, go out to a family outing. This month you can't because, everything's a little bit more expensive. You don't have it. Nothing's really changed, but the prices keep going up. And you're like, how can I argue? I feel like I'm just getting screwed. And they're like, Mom, Dad, I want to go do this thing. And you're like, I literally can't,
Major talking point for the 2024 election.
For Harris and Trump, focusing on the middle class, speaking directly to promises of building the middle class or rescuing the middle class, these are promises that in some way offer an umbrella pitch for why they are the best candidate for the health of the U.S. economy.
I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has
they whipped out. I was from a middle-class family.
Plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America.
She wants to...
I think Trump was trying to figure out, he's like, so what was her answer there?
Build 3 million new homes over the courses of her potential administration, increase the supply of housing, and lower the price. She has pledged to crack down on hidden junk fees and other corporate pricing practices that she sees as the reason for high prices. For Harris, a lot of boosting the middle class comes down to putting more money in the middle class's wallet.
I guess we'll never know, though.
I have a plan, $6,000. For young families for the first year of your child's life. $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
That also, by the way, would not bring prices of houses down $25,000. That would artificially raise the prices $25,000 because once more, if it's a two-way deal. If someone owns the house and the government's willing to give that person extra $25,000 for a first-time new house, all of a sudden you're jacking the price of that thing up $25,000 to sell to this person, and ultimately everything is gonna be a wash. And then $6,000 for a kid in their first year. Here, let's grok this. What is the average price to raise a kid until 18 years of age? Grok is thinking. It's looking like it's going to cost you $250,000 to raise a kid over from the ages of 1 to 18, and the government just wants to give you a little ball, like tickle on your balls, and just say, "Nah, we're just going to give you $6,000." Granted, I shouldn't say the government because they're not doing that because Trump won. Yeah.
For Trump, he's painting his candidacy as sort of the change campaign. People are sick of the economic status quo, and he wants to be the person to relieve them of the economic pain that he sees as the result of, a disastrous Biden-Harris administration.
I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country.
She's like, shit, he's right.
Lowering prices and ending inflation is a matter of growing the economy as a whole. A lot of his proposals, economists have analyzed and said they could threaten to reheat inflation in the short term. Things like his tariff proposals that would increase producer costs for manufacturers, which...
I mean, the Biden-Harris campaign can say whatever the hell they want. Currently, they're setting us to be entering a World War III. They're like, you know what? Fine. If you want to win, we're tearing it down. We're burning it all down. You can't have it.
could then translate to higher consumer prices.
We're doing tariffs on other countries.
That was my Kamala impression, by the way, when she's real mad.
Countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world.
He says, look at the long term. Once we grow the economy in the long term, that value is going to trickle down and outweigh any short-term costs or pain that you feel from the immediate implementation of some of his plans.
The middle class is really a component of the American experience that, many people aspire to. It really does.
What kind of
connote a
motivational
feeling
speech are we
of
trying to give right now?
opportunity, not just for that family, but for their children's and really future generations. I think government policy is really central to thinking about the challenges facing the middle class today. And it would be beneficial if more Americans had a feel for how these policies interact with and really affect the well-being of their families.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought that was like an egg or something that dropped on his face there at the end, but if you guys are picking up what I'm putting down, you like the way the words are flowing out my mouth, smash that like button. If it's there, if it's anywhere, smash it with your freaking nose. I bet you can't. And most importantly, one thing I want you to try to do, if anything, if you don't subscribe, you don't like the video, that's okay, because my challenge to you, make somebody laugh today. We all know that there's enough hate in this freaking world. So if we could spread a little positivity in this world and make somebody laugh today and just change it one person at a time, one smile at a time, we can make our local communities a lot happier of a place. So with that said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace!